Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 110, coming at you from the valley on this beautiful Wednesday morning. Got a little bit of a work day, getting ready to head to Chicago for work. Wish it was for UFC, but unless the UFC tickets for UFC 319 drastically drop right before, your boy's going to miss out. Pretty bummed about that. But I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts or videos on YouTube. We have one hell of a show today because of UFC 319. But we also have some fights that have been announced. We will preview this week's PFL Championship. We also will recap the final episode of Ultimate Fighter and the first episode of Dana White Contender Series. We will recap UFC Fight Night Vegas 109 and, of course, preview UFC 319. So let's jump right in. We have some fights that have been announced. At UFC 320, we have Austin Vanderford taking on Ramiz Brahimaj, which should be a fun scrap. And then at UFC 321, we have Jacqueline Amarim taking on Mizuki Inui. And October 11th, we have Vicente Luque taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. And then November 1st, due to Raquel Pennington pulling out, we have Ketlin Vieira taking on Norma Dumont in a title eliminator bout. But the big news this week, the UFC finally announcing their new TV streaming deal, signing a 7-year, $7.7 billion deal with CBS and Paramount Plus. The original deal with ESPN, $1.1 billion over 5 years. So now getting that annually. There isn't a lot of details for the shows like Contender Series and Ultimate Fighter yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. For me, it's the fight catalog. You know, is Paramount Plus going to be able to archive the fights? Is it only going to be Fight Pass? What's going to happen there? To watch real-time on-demand fights if I'm a little late. So lots of details to be done. But also the big news is that supposedly pay-per-view will be dead. Dana, after the Contender Series last night, didn't really give confidence that pay-per-views are dead, but he did not announce that pay-per-views will continue after 2025. They have discussed 4 premium events each year. We had the Sphere, we have the White House coming up. Maybe those 4 events are pay-per-views, which I'm totally okay with. But if I could avoid paying $70, $80 at least a month for a pay-per-view, that would be ideal. And then fighters' pay is another topic. Dana confirmed that bonuses will be going up, but no details because the champions really did make a lot more money with pay-per-view points. With the days of illegal streaming, a lot of people aren't buying pay-per-views, so a lot of that money has gone down. But it seems like all good things for the UFC. The question is, why would Paramount want to do this? Well, because there is weekly action, you are getting a sports fan base that is growing and is pretty large in numbers that will stay on your platform, stay subscribed to Paramount Plus. It won't be like soccer or the other sports where they tune in for a part of the year, cancel their subscriptions. Regardless, massive win for TKO and UFC. That's for damn sure. I hope it all works out because I wasn't specifically super impressed with what ESPN's product was. But we have the PFL Championships. We got lightweights, bantamweights, and women's flyweights on Friday in Charlotte, North Carolina. The prelims at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on ESPN+. The main card at 6 p.m. on ESPN. The good fights that I care about, we have Alfie Davis taking on Godzi Rabanov. I'd assume Godzi gets the job done, but that's a great fight. We have Jenna Bishop taking on Liz Carmouche. I kind of expect another grappling-heavy win for Liz Carmouche. A fight that really intrigues me because I don't really know who's going to win. I've seen a couple of Alves's fights. He looks like the real deal. But we get Surly Alves taking on Justin Wetzel. And then we have Mads Burnell taking on Robert Watley. I'm actually a lot more excited for the next championship bout card. I don't know if any of these fights really are going to be that good. I think the Wetzel-Alves fight will probably be the best. But again, overall, just not super impressed with the cards that the PFL is putting out. Regardless, we finished the Ultimate Fighter. On this week's episode, the coaches took the fighters out to Resorts World in Vegas. They got a fancy dinner and some drinks to let loose. You know, a lot of guys are done fighting. They had Rashad Evans come practice with Team DC. Love me some Rashad. One of my favorite Ultimate Fighter seasons. What really brought me into the Ultimate Fighter was Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson. That shit was classic. And then we had the final fight, excuse me, between Matt Dixon and Daniil Doncheko. And this was probably the fight I was looking forward to the most, really through all of Ultimate Fighter, just because of the potential violence that we could see. And it was violent as expected. I mean, both men came out the gates landing some big shots. They were uber aggressive. And once Matt Dixon had Daniil in a clinch in the mid-cage in like a tight clinch, Daniil just kind of kept landing or throwing short elbows, and a couple of them would barely land or miss. Well, he ended up getting one that cut Matt right above the eye. Matt pressured Daniil up against the cage, and when he was up against the cage, Daniil rained down some blows right on the top of Matt Dixon's head. The ref stopped the fight temporarily, saying it was strikes in the back of the head, which technically could have DQ'd Daniil. Matt Dixon's a dog. I really like him, even though he lost. And I thought that, you know, he showed that he wanted to go out there and finish what was done. So he continued to fight. And you could tell he just wasn't the same. He was kind of wobbly, looked kind of weird. You know, after the break, Matt came in swinging still, but Daniil was able to land some big combos, pressured Matt up against the cage, and had him crumble for the quick finish. But while the fight lasted, high intensity, high violence, bloodied up, probably one of the best fights of the Ultimate Fighter this year. So that sets us up for the Ultimate Fighter finale. The first bouts of UFC 319 will be the championships. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But then we had week one of the Contender Series, and what a dud it was. Dana White only gave out 2 contracts to Ty Miller and Bisanger Susurkaev. But in one of the bouts, we had Radley De Silva with a unanimous decision over George Mangos. Mangos was an undefeated Australian prospect that was pretty hyped up. Well, Radley took the first 2 rounds with a grappling-heavy attack. He wasn't super offensive with the control, looking for submissions or inflicting damage. But in the 3rd round, George was able to get on top with some reversals. He was actually delivering some ground and pound in round 3, but it wasn't enough to win the fight. But Radley did not get a contract. Dana was pretty harsh on him. Then we had Bisanger Susurkaev with a round 1 TKO via teep kick or front kick over Murtaza Talha. And in this fight, the big thing to know is that Surkaev took this on like a week's notice. He trains with Khamzat Chimaev, so he kind of helped save week 1 to come in and take this fight on short notice. And in this fight, Talha was able to close distance and get Surkaev up against the cage early. But when Surkaev was able to create distance, he landed a beautiful teep right under the ribs of Talha, shut him down, got a quick TKO finish, taking it on short notice. The potential, he's had all first-round finishes pretty much in his pro career. Dana White gave him a contract. Then we had Yuri Panfarov, a guy that's getting a second attempt on the Contender Series with unanimous decision over Christopher Uvert. And Christopher, you could tell he has been practicing in the Thai. He had a lot of wasted movement, doing a lot of stuff, not doing a lot of things, and not a lot of head movement. It was a lot of this kind of stuff early in the fight. And Yuri, ideally you're doing that to throw your opponent's timing off. Yuri wasn't having it. He just came in with beautiful 1-2s down the middle, straight shots. And the shots that he had were landing pretty cleanly and powerfully. But midway through the first round, Yuri got a takedown and had Uvert's back a few times to control the rest of the round. At the very end of the round, Christopher did get up, and Yuri started putting it on him and almost had a finish, but he was saved by the bell. Then in round 2, they had some fun exchanges, but Yuri ended up on top again. And then by round 3, these guys have been going at it. They were pretty gassed, but they kept clanging and banging pretty sloppily, hands down, bad body language. But Yuri eventually got another takedown, got Christopher's back, got a body triangle in, and pretty much coasted to victory. But it wasn't enough for Dana to give him a contract, especially a guy that's been on there 2 times. I kind of feel for Yuri. Almost had a finish in round 1. He battled. Christopher was a dog. Pretty debatable in my opinion. If it was a great night of fights, maybe Dana gives him a contract. Then we had Ty Miller with a unanimous decision over Jimmy Drago. Man, this saved the bout card for episode 1. Ty Miller is absolutely massive in there. Not a lot of muscle, kind of a tall, lengthy guy. But his boxing was so crisp all night. His length on full display. His jab right on the money, down the middle. It was just eating Drago up. But hey, Drago was a dog. He battled in there. But the size, Ty really made Drago look like a lightweight, not a welterweight fighter. And although Drago didn't give up and kept coming at Miller, Miller just took it to him for the whole 15 minutes. The first 10 minutes, I would say Ty really had him beat up. In round 3, a guy could easily crumble. Well, Drago was tough enough to keep coming, knew he needed to get a finish, gave him everything he had, spinning attacks, the whole 9. But Ty was a dog as well. Although there was no finish here, it wasn't from a lack of effort or volume. That's why Ty Miller got a contract. It seems like Dana White wants him to go to the PI and bulk up a little bit. Add some muscle at least. And then in the main event, really just a sour taste and finish to the card. We had a pretty hyped up France prospect, Ilian Bufia, with a unanimous decision over Nemes Santana. In the main event, it was just a weird start, as both men were very, very measured, but Santana got a takedown, and when he was in Bufia's guard on top, postured up, he kind of went to grab, and instead of posturing down, he purposely headbutted Bufia. One of the weirdest things I've ever seen, especially, as far removed as we are from legal headbutts. It only cost Santana a point. I think it was borderline disqualification because it was clearly something he purposely did. But the fight continued. Ilian landed a bunch of good high kicks early in the fight. That was really the highlight of this fight. I mean, every time Santana threw, it was with 100% power, but Bufia had good defense and good movement. He really didn't get hit too bad with them. Both men were super cautious in round 2. Seemed like they were both waiting for each other to progress so they could counter each other. And then round 3, another very slow round. Neither man really went after it. We're looking to put highlights on and earn a contract, especially in the main event slot. So Dana was pretty harsh on those guys. Not super stoked for either Contender Series contract. Ty does have some potential. He's got a lot to grow. Again, probably needs to put some muscle on. And Cerqueira, yeah, he got the teep kick. I don't know. I need to see more from him. But it'll be interesting to see the next week if we could get some promising prospects coming in. But let's talk about last week's card. UFC Fight Night Vegas 109. Your boy's hot. I wish I would have just parlayed the 20 fights the past 2 weeks. Would have made $1 bajillion. But I went 10-2 on my picks. Overall, 681 wins, 337 losses, 9 no contests or draws. Your boy's back to doubling up the loss column. On the year, I'm 197 wins, 96 losses, 2 no contests and draws. It feels oh so sweet to be better than doubled up my losses. There's not a lot of people out there doing that. To recap this card, I would say for the most part, the card was good overall. It had a good mix of fights early. We had some early finishes from some bright, young, talented fighters. That was a story for me. We had that nasty slam knockout by Elijah. Jocelyn, potentially women's knockout of the year. I mean, the card delivered. Like I said, it was a deeper, more well-matched than the previous week. And there was no, obviously, massive headlining names. So for a fight night, we're going to recap it a 7 out of 10. Again, a couple fights we did not break down. We had Jocelyn Edwards with a round 1 knockout over Priscilla Kohara. Performance of the night, 50 Gs for Jocelyn. And that's why we didn't break it down. I assumed it was going to be slight work for her, as well as Elijah with a round 1 knockout over Toshiomi Kazama. Performance of the night, 50 Gs for Elijah. So let's kick this off in the prelims. We had Uros Medic with a round 1 knockout over Gilbert Urbina. I mean, what a wild start here. Gilbert came forward right out the gates with an overhand right, sat Uros down, but he was able to recover quickly. Then Uros, after gathering himself, just exploded forward, landed a nice knee, a few powerful lefts, and one of the lefts just put Gilbert's lights completely out. At this point, I would assume Gilbert might be done in the UFC. He's been very dependent on getting takedowns and living off his grappling, and his durability just doesn't seem to be there, and he's still young. But statistically, well, first, before we talk about the stats, I mean, huge comeback win for Uros to get sat down like that early. It could crumble your game plan, but he came out there, gathered himself, put it back on Gilbert. And for Gilbert, it's got to be tough to start a fight that way. You haven't lived off your striking to then get knocked out that quickly. But huge for Uros and his future. Again, pretty gloomy for Gilbert at this point. But statistically, it only took Uros 6 total and 5 significant strikes with the knockdown. Gilbert landed 5 total and significant strikes with the knockdown of his own. So Uros starts a new winning streak. He moves to 3-2 since 2023. Gilbert extends his losing streak to 2. He moves to 1-3 in the UFC. So what's next? If Gilbert does have a lifeline available, how about Court McGee take on the veteran? And for Uros, a fight with Max Griffin. That's the fight to make. Also in the prelims, we had Julius Walker with a unanimous decision over Rafael Cerqueira. In round 1, Rafael was pretty aggressive. He was pressuring forward with ruthless abandonment and was landing some big shots. Some of those big shots made Julius turn into a grappler, which he has a kickboxing background. And Julius, although he did get the takedowns, wasn't able to hold him down for the entire round, but did have a lot more success in rounds 2 and 3 with his relentless offensive attack, and I think Rafael was pretty gassed. He wore on Cerqueira, and although it didn't look beautiful, he gets a win. He took advantage of Cerqueira's weakness. Sometimes that's what you need to do. Wasn't very impressed with Julius, though. I was hoping to see a better showing. Cerqueira, I don't think super highly of. And when the fight was standing, he was getting the best of Julius. More so because he is powerful and he was just aggressive. Julius has to be better working angles, getting on his bike, circling things around, landing kicks to keep those guys at bay. But statistically, Julius landed 96 total strikes, 44 of them significant. He had 6 takedowns in 10 attempts. So if he wanted it, he got it. He had a knockdown and 11 minutes and 46 seconds of control time, so more than 2 rounds. Rafael landed only 30 total strikes, 19 of them significant. So Julius starts a new winning streak. He's 1-1 in the UFC. And Rafael still seeks his first UFC win, extends that losing streak to 3. I really don't expect Cerqueira to fight in the UFC again. He's already 35. And for Julius, a fight with Marcin Prokhnio should be next. And hopefully a fun kickboxing showdown. Moving on to the main card. Man, this is a bad dude. We had Christian Leroy Duncan with a round 1 knockout over Eryk Anders. Performance of the night, 50 Gs for CLD. And coming in, Eryk has mentioned that he is fighting out his UFC contract, which after this fight, he has one more fight left, so he's pretty much on the brink of retirement. And I am glad that he has one more fight left because CLD used his length and unorthodox technique to get the best of Eryk in this fight. And he had him crumbled after Anders got a takedown early and had him controlled up against the cage. But man, CLD is an offensive force to be reckoned with. He showcased that in this fight against a very tough and durable Anders Not many people can get him out in one round of a fight. Beautiful display for Christian. Hopefully Eryk gets a bright send-off with his final UFC fight. Statistically, Eryk landed 18 total strikes, 7 significant. He had 1 takedown in 3 attempts with 1 minute and 18 seconds of control time. And Christian landed 27 total strikes, 24 of them significant with the knockdown, and 39 seconds of control time. So Christian extends his winning streak to 2. He's 5-2 since 2023. And Eryk starts a new losing streak and is 2-2 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I'd love to see Christian and Bruno Ferreira clang and bang. I think that's absolutely bonkers. And for Eryk, in his retirement fight, he could look to get it done against another veteran, maybe Dustin Stoltzfus. Moving on. I've been calling him Gene on the telecast. They said Gian. I don't know what to believe. You would assume listening to the telecast, the guys do their due justice to say, hey, what is your name? Spell it out for me. But something as simple as most people don't know in the NFL, it's not Jason and Travis Kelce. It's actually Kels, right? You could hear Pat call him Kels. He talked about it on his podcast. There's even fighters that we say wrong names for no reason. So I am going to go with Gian. I guess that's it. We have Gian Matsumoto with a split decision victory over Miles Johns. This is one of the fights I got wrong. Or no, I got it right. I almost went with Miles. But Miles started this fight very well. He was the fighter pressuring the young Matsumoto backwards, which you have to do because Matsumoto comes at you relentlessly. So you got to keep him backwards so he can't be coming forward and firing off shots and offensively striking into takedowns with that natural momentum. And it was funny. Previewing the fight last week, I was like, I really think the way that Miles beats Gian is that he offensively strikes into his own takedowns because he has good grappling of his own. If you're waiting, Gian's going to blast through you. Well, in the first round, it was literally that to a T. He was the first to initiate the wrestling. He had success, got a takedown, landed the better strikes, clearly won round 1. And hey, it's like I know what I'm talking about. But the problem with Matsumoto is you may have a game plan, but trying to do that over the course of 15 minutes with his cardio and pace, a lot easier said than done. And in round 2, Gene came out aggressively. He landed some major low kicks, which kind of pivoted the fight because Miles' lead leg was compromised by round 2. He was switching stances and striking with a ton of combos, but Miles was still having success with his nice left hook. I think it being 1-1, it's a winner takes all round 3. Gian just had too much of a pace for Miles. Even though Jones was able to get takedowns, it was another very impressive showcase from the young Matsumoto. He's continuing to build his stock. He's evolving his striking. Really tough loss for Miles. He's in his prime. He was almost desperate for a win and now is stuck in purgatory of the very deep bantamweight waters because it is a deep division with a lot of young talent that you don't want to be fighting when you're trying to stack together wins. But statistically, Miles landed 89 total strikes, 83 of them significant. He had 5 takedowns in 8 attempts and 3 minutes and 12 seconds of control time. But Gian landed 109 total strikes, so 20 more, 95 significant, 12 more. He had 2 submission attempts, a reversal, was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts, and 56 seconds of control time. So, again, Miles, 5 of 8 in takedowns, that's great. Pretty good volume, had some control time, defended all of Gian's takedown attempts, and still lost. That just shows you the potential of Gian. So Gian now starts a new winning streak. He's 4-1 since 2023. Miles extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-1 since 2023. So Gian has already fought stiff competition twice this year. I think the next could be Ricky Simone, maybe late in the year, early next year. Would love to see that. And for Miles, he could fight Kwang Lee. Moving on, a little underdog. Your boy got right. We had Andre Fili with a split decision victory over Christian Rodriguez, and I highly am opposed to the split decision. I'm a little shocked that was the case. But what a fight this was. I mean, in round 1, Christian was aggressive. He was landing combinations, landing leg kicks. He was able to pressure Andre back, but Andre had the length advantage, a lot much cleaner straight shots that he threw, and he landed a nice shot that got Christian's respect. Well, Christian was able to recover with about a minute left. Then Rodriguez got a takedown at the end of the round. Very debatable. I still think Andre wins round 1. It was a very close round, but I did think Fili landed more precise and damaging strikes, and I actually gave Fili all 3 rounds. But round 2, Fili pressured forward, and he was in the zone. His straight jab was money, his kicks were on point, and he was able to defend the takedowns at C-Rod through this round. And although C-Rod landed some nice strikes of his own, Andrew was in total control where the fight went, controlling the distance. Then in round 3, Fili was able to land his jab, continued again, but Christian was aggressive with his combinations, probably knowing he's down on the scorecards, and he had forward pressure because he needed that finish. But every time he got overzealous, Andre would just shoot for like a nice blast leg double, perfectly timed, and that helped him coast to victory. That's just the veteran experience that Fili has at this point. Again, I'm shocked one judge scored the fight for Rodriguez, but beautiful display by Andre. Christian's still young. This will be a huge learning moment for him. But when you're fighting a guy that is as elusive, good defensively, and crisp with the jab in a 1-2, sometimes the simplicity of striking makes a difference, because a guy like Christian, a lot more loopy stuff. So if I have a couple inches on you and you're trying to come in with the hick, my jab's already smashing you back. It's taking off your hooks and your shots. So regardless, fun fight. Andre landed 74 total strikes, 64 of them significant. He had 3 takedowns in 5 attempts and 1 minute and 42 seconds of control time. Now, Christian landed 95 total strikes, 83 of them significant. He only had 1 takedown in 7 attempts, so credit Fili's defense, and 1 minute and 35 seconds of control time. But Andre starts a new winning streak. He moves to 3-3 since 2023. Christian extends his losing streak to 2. He is 4-3 since 2023, still seeking a win against a veteran, not an up-and-coming undefeated prospect. He's literally the prospect killer. But what's next? Imagine this. Andre Fili, Morgan Scherer. That would be an absolute banger. And for Christian, a matchup with Danny Silva would be fun. Now, this is the fight that killed my parlays. I was so confident, too. But we had Iasmin Lucindo with the unanimous decision over Angela Hill. And this one obviously did not play out the way I thought it would. Clearly, Lucindo's very young, and she's been training with Virna Jandiroba, one of the best grapplers in women's MMA. And clearly she's leveled up. I mean, she was able to control the grappling, beat Angela at her own game. She was pressuring Hill, controlling her in the clinch, and just overwhelmed her with volume. She kind of bullied her in there. Now, Angela never really had much success, as her shots that landed didn't have a lot of power and damage behind them, and Iasmin was able to shrug them off. I mean, Iasmin clearly the more powerful striker, which was no surprise. I just didn't think she'd be able to offensively grapple, shut down Angela's attack, bully her in the clinch, because she got out grappled by Marina Rodriguez. But again, she's leveled up, she's young. The only success Angela had in this fight was in round 2. She did get a guillotine that was super deep, and I was like, man, could you imagine if she pulled this off? Oh, I would have made a lot of money. But anyways, beautiful display by Iasmin. She's on a roll now. She's going to be fighting stiff competition. Angela, she's like, I think 41 years old. Probably has one more in her. Tough loss for her, but hey, that's the fight game for you. Statistically, Iasmin landed 100 total strikes, 72 of them significant. She had 3 takedowns in 7 attempts and 5 minutes and 37 seconds of control time. And Angela landed 80 total strikes, 64 of them significant. Was 0 for, which I'm so surprised, 0 for 5 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, and 1 minute and 19 seconds of control time. So Iasmin starts a new winning streak. She is 5-1 since 2023. She moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 7. And Angela starts a new losing streak. She is 3-3 since 2023. She stays at number 12. So again, Iasmin with a win like that, you're number 7 in the rankings, you're getting thrown in the deep end. A lot of the women are already matched up, so how about Iasmin and Tabitha Ricci? I think that should be next. And for Angela, again, I'm not sure how many more she has left. She's fought a lot of people in the division, so how about a fight with Denise Gomes? That makes sense for me. Then in the co-main, holy shit, I was about to be so shocked in this one. But Steve prevailed. We had Steve Erceg with the unanimous decision over Ode Osbourne. And to start the fight, it seemed like there could have been one of the bigger upsets, I mean, I would say of the year, with this short notice affair. I mean, I was a big fan of Ode as he was in his late 20s coming into his prime. He is skilled. And that was on full display as he showcased his potential here. He seemed like the bigger and quicker striker to start the fight. And he landed a beautiful left hook that rocked Erceg. And it looked like Ode was going to pounce on him and get the finish. It was super close. He had landed a bunch of strikes. Somehow, though, he was able to go from here, turn, grab a leg. The ref kept the fight going. I mean, I would like to ask Steve, honestly, how close he was, or if he even remembers that moment. But Steve was able to stay alive. He was just trying to close distance and turn into a grappler after getting smoked like that. But Ode was able to scramble on top and easily win the round as Steve survived. He must be feeling a lot of pressure, coming into the UFC, getting thrown into a title fight, fighting Killers Row, having a 3-fight losing streak, and then almost getting knocked out by Ode Osbourne, who's not even ranked in the first round. But he was calm, cool, and collected. The rest of the fight, he was able to close distance, control the fight with knees up the middle. He had well-timed combinations because Ode was the more powerful and probably quicker striker. But Steve was able to move around Ode's power, and after round 1, Ode, I just don't understand. He does this a lot. He stopped being aggressive. It's like, if you just throw more volume out, you got to throw a shot to land a shot. He just was super not aggressive after round 1. And again, that's mind-blowing to me and something that typically we've seen from Ode. But by round 3, Steve was able to get Ode down, was able to get his back, had a body triangle in, but Ode was able to escape, but Steve got him back down to finish the fight. So it was a pretty grappling-heavy fight after round 1. Steve did land some good strikes, was able to have good movement, good exits and entrances to avoid the power of Ode. Ode, you got to throw some strikes. Like, biggest moment, short notice. This is probably your last good lifeline in the UFC to be in the rankings. You knock the guy down in round 1, and then you don't throw a lot of volume. Blows my mind. And at this point, I do think Steve has learned a lot of lessons. It's probably a huge monkey off his back. But Ode taking another loss, he's going to be lucky to keep fighting in the UFC much longer. And it's sad because he's in the middle of his prime. He's super talented. But he has to be take more chances. You got to be a fighter. You got to fight to fight. But statistically, Steve only landed 39 total strikes, 20 of them significant. He had 3 takedowns and 10 attempts, so Ode did his best to defend. A submission attempt and 4 minutes and 47 seconds of control time. Now, Ode landed 47 total, 35 of them significant. And I swear to you, let's look what the UFC website has to say here. Out of those strikes, I want to say damn near half were in round 1. Let's see. So out of Ode's 47 total strikes, 26 of them were in round 1. Round 2, 15. Round 3, 6. And grappling played a part, but before the grappling, he was just letting Steve come to him. Brutal. So Steve now ends Ode also had a takedown in 2 attempts, a reversal, and 1 minute and 9 seconds of control time. But Steve now ends that 3-fight winning streak. He's 4-3 in the UFC, stays at 10 in the rankings, and Ode starts a new losing streak and moves to 2-4 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I think Steve and Alex Perez should be next. For Ode, how about Edgar Chairez? Then moving on to the main event. Absolute fucking ragdoll job Anthony Hernandez with a round 4 submission via rear naked choke over Roman Dolidze. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Fluffy, man. I mean, this was complete domination from Anthony. He is hitting his peak in his prime, and he dominated a very tough, durable guy. A guy that's really hard hitting. He's got solid striking and really good grappling, and Anthony completely out-grappled him. Anthony was able to pressure Roman, who is typically a pressure fighter, and just completely broke him. I mean, Roman was coming off an impressive 3-fight winning streak, and he just didn't look like he belonged in there versus Anthony. I don't know how many more Anthony needs to win. He's on a big winning streak. The top of the division stacked, but Fluffy is a legit contender in the middleweight division, and he deserves to be fighting the best that the division has to offer. But the moment in this fight was in round 4. Again, Roman's completely broken. Fluffy has him up against the cage. Roman is facing the cage. Fluffy has his back. Literally just says, screw it. Cranks up on his face. Stands the man up. Walks backwards. And Roman taps. I don't think I've ever seen such a kind of embarrassing choke in my life. I mean, Anthony just said, give me that. And just lifted him up. Oh, man. What a performance. I mean, not a lot happening here besides Roman getting thrown around. But Roman landed 39 total strikes, 36 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts and had 45 seconds of control time. Anthony landed 120 total, 91 of them significant. He had 9 takedowns and 11 attempts. If he wanted it, he got it. He had a submission attempt and 7 minutes and 48 seconds of control time. So Anthony is winning streaks now to 8. He moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 7. Roman ends his 3-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He's 3-3 since 2023, and he drops 2 spots in the rankings to number 11. And what's next? Like I said when RDR won, I thought the winner of this fight's perfect for RDR. After this Fluffy performance, I think it's even better. That would be an absolute fantastic matchup. I don't think RDR is going to be next for the title. There's a lot of matches that are pretty much made. So let's make it Anthony RDR. And for Roman, he could take on another Roman in Roman Kopylov. But yeah, a solid Apex card. I mean, Anthony, slight work, not an amazing main event. Steve with the bounce back, kind of a dud of a fight with a lot of grappling. Iasmin, complete domination. But the Andre Fili fight, the Gian Matsumoto fight, great fights. Beautiful performance from CLD. Beautiful performance from Uros Medic. Jocelyn Edwards and Elijah Smith. Probably should have recapped it to 6 out of 10, but I'm giving it a 7. And that sets us up this week for UFC 319. You know what? Let's look at tickets right now. Let's see if there's just a God moment. Someone's selling a ticket they can't sell because they're too expensive. So right now, I'm pulling up UFC 319 in United Center Arena. I'm not going to go... So I went to this arena, watched a Bulls game in a 200 level, watched a Blackhawks game at the 100 level. This is a big-ass arena. If you're in 200, maybe okay. But you're in the 300, good luck watching the fights. You're going to be watching a Jumbotron. So if I'm going to go 100 level. Obviously would like to be the very back of the 100 level. That's my favorite seat for UFC. Cheapest ticket, $1,015. They even are selling the same exact seat for $2,800. 200 level, $917 cheapest seat. Some of them going for $3,000. Sure, you could get a 700, 600 seat in the 300 level, but I'm just not doing it. Looks like your boy is probably not going. That's just too goddamn expensive. I paid $850 for the Sphere, $900 for UFC 299. I think International Fight Week, John Jones, Thiago Santos, my first card for my birthday, $200 for 200 level seats. Shit's gotten out of control. Don't have to pay for pay-per-views anymore, though. Well, regardless, the action starts in the early prelims, 3 p.m. Pacific, prelims at 5 p.m. Pacific, all on prelims on ESPN. To preview this card, the main card obviously steals the show. but the prelims have some very enticing matchup. The card starts with the Ultimate Fighter finale fights, and boy, Bryan battle moving up against Nursulton Ruziboev. That's intriguing. We have Edson Barboza, Drakkar Klose, Certified Violence, Bobby Green, Diego Fieta. Going to be insane. I really do think the title fight and the Leroy versus Pico fight, those two fights are some of the more exciting and more interesting fights we could see in all of the UFC right now. Also, we'll talk about it later, I wouldn't be surprised if Eryk Pico just did the patchy mix look and just get completely dominated by Leroy. But on paper, the unknowns, Leroy Pico, DDP, Khamzat, dude, fucking phenomenal. I'm previewing this card a 9 out of 10. There is a few good fights we won't break down. We have Diane Barboza subbing in to take on Karine Silva. And then the Ultimate Fighter fights. We got Idris Alibi taking on Joseph Morales and Rodrigo Senzenato taking on Danil Danchenko. Danil Danchenko is absolutely violent. Guy's insane. I expect him to win. Would really be excited to see him in the UFC. And then for the flyweights, it could go either way. Idris Alibi definitely lives off grappling. Joseph Morales has been in the UFC already. Solid grappler. But Idris puts on a pace, and Joseph tired in his last fight, almost cost him the fight. It'll be interesting to see that one. I'm going to go with Joseph Morales just because I think he has more well-rounded attack. But let's kick this off in the prelims. This is a low-key banger. We got Nursulton Black Ruziboev, 31 years old with a 36-9-2 record, taking on Bryan the Butcher Battle. 30 years old with a 13-2 record. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how Bryan does at middleweight. His last fight was middleweight for short notice, but he's been building his stock in the welterweight division for some time, and he's a lot bigger in the welterweight division. He has 5 wins, but now he's going to face a killer in the middleweight division who's in his prime, looks like a serious contender. I mean, Nursulton has had a great start to his UFC career. Bryan is probably one of the better opponents he's faced, but he's in his prime as well. So breaking it down, Nursulton has an orthodox stance. He's got a purple belt in BJJ. He's a Fight Nights Global and Brave alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 4-1 since 2023. 20 of his 36 wins are via submission, 13 via knockout, so 33 of his 36 wins via finish. Now, Bryan has an orthodox stance as well. He's an Ultimate Fighter alum and former champion. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, does have a no contest in there. 5 of his 12 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 9 of his 12 wins via finish. These guys are finishers. Now, I do think Nursulton is a little bit more skilled, probably more well-rounded than Bryan. Bryan has solid striking. But I think Ruziboev has more attacks with his kicking game. Bryan's going to look to close distance and get Nursulton up against the cage, use the clinch, make this as ugly as possible. But I think at middleweight, that game plan doesn't work as well because these guys are naturally bigger. I do think Nursulton will either outpoint Bryan or maybe even look to take him down and get a submission opportunity. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. I'm taking Nursulton Ruziboev. But I'm avoiding this on any parlays. Bryan's been down and counted out many a times, and he has proved people wrong. I'm not confident enough to parlay that. Moving on. Again, certified violence right here. We got Edson Jr. Barboza, 39 years old with a 24-12 record, taking on Drakkar Klose, 37 years old with a 15-3-1 record. Now, this matchup, absolutely guaranteed violence. We get 2 veterans who are really just kill or be killed kind of style, and they've been in some good fights of late. I mean, Edson Barboza is an absolute walking highlight. His quickness, his power, his kicking ability, and Drakkar is just a brute force with good grappling that he's going to have to rely on in this fight. If he's going to have a chance at winning, I think he's going to need to get takedowns. But breaking it down, Edson trains out of American Top Team. He has a black Prajid in Muay Thai, a black belt in Taekwondo, and a brown belt in BJJ. 4 of his last 6 fights have been Fight of the Night or Performance of the Night. He shows up. He shows out. He's tied with Dustin Poirier for most Fight of the Night bonuses in UFC history with 10. He could surpass your boy. He had the 2012 Knockout of the Year against Terry Etim, the 2017 Knockout of the Year against Beneil Dariush. He's a Ring of Combat alum and former champion. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 14 of his 24 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 12 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. And he does have a 5-inch reach advantage. Now, Drakkar has an orthodox stance. He trains out of the MMA Lab and Red Hawk Academy here in Phoenix. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He's an RFA alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 6 of his 15 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 3 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a finish here. I mean, kind of pretty obvious. But I think that Edson will win if it does go to a decision. The reason being is he typically has a lot more volume, while Drakkar lives off pressure and being able to mix in the grappling. Edson's takedown defense is much improved because he fought a lot of grapplers. But Leroy Murphy had success against him in his last fight. So if Klose could take Edson down, keep him down to win rounds, it's very possible he could sneak out a decision. I just think Edson's still got that zest behind him, and he's going to have too much volume for Drakkar. For that reason, I'm taking Edson Barboza, but I'm avoiding this on any parlay. Drakkar could easily win this. Moving on, still in the prelims, we have Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez, 32 years old with a 16-8 record, taking on Chase the Dream Hooper, 25 years old with a 16-3-1 record. Now, again, I'll probably keep saying this until Chase gets a little older, but it's wild to think Chase is only 25 years old. He's completely grown. He's got a baby. I think he's married, and he's been with the UFC for 6 years now. He's taken on stiff competition, Hernandez, who's in his prime, and he's looked good since he's moved up to lightweight. You know, Chase has improved his striking. He's looked good since he's moved up to lightweight as well. But I think Alexander should be much more ahead of us than Chase in his skill set. Obviously, 7-year advantage. But Chase has crazy good BJJ. You could practice to be prepared against BJJ, but Chase Hooper is a different kind of dude. So if Alex does get takedowns, he's going to have to be very careful down on the mat. Breaking it down, Alexander trains out of Factory X. He has a black belt in BJJ. He had the 2018 Upset of the Year against Beneil Dariush. He's an RFA and LFA alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 3-2 since 2023. 6 of his 16 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 8 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now Chase has a black belt in BJJ as well. He's a Contender Series, Cage Fury, Island Fights, and Titan FC alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, and 8 of his 16 wins are via submission. Now, what it comes down to, I do think at this point in Alex's career, he is the best version of himself, especially since moving up to lightweight. Now, I love Chase Hooper. He is very skilled. He has a chaotic offensive attack, but I still believe he has a lot of room to grow. He's been very impressive, but he hasn't faced the level of competition that Hernandez has. Alexander is going to look to pick Chase apart from distance and not let him close in to get wild grappling going. For that reason, I'm taking Alexander Hernandez. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we get that bread. Oh yeah, Alexander Hernandez, also an underdog. The dogs coming to eat. Plenty of underdog opportunities on this card. Be careful. Seems like every pay-per-view I'm hyped up on underdogs. It doesn't always work, or I get the wrong ones. But moving on. Still in the prelims, we have Loopy Godinez, 31 years old with a 13-5 record and the number 11 next to her name, taking on Jessica Bate Estaca Andrade, 33 years old with a 26-14 record and the number 5 next to her name. I actually don't know who the favorite is on this one. I forgot. I want to see if I picked the underdog. But this fight's very interesting. We get two women who are very active and are well-rounded fighters. Jessica has been in a rough patch. You know, the women she's been facing are much more technical with their kickboxing. And Jessica's typically just the bull. She lives off pressuring her competition and overpowering them. And she attacks with big, wide, loopy hooks. So if you find someone that has nice, straight, technical boxing like Loopy, you know, there's definitely an opening there. And Loopy's big. She posted a photo this week. She's looking freaking shredded. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I'm right. I don't think Loopy's going to get overpowered by Jessica, which makes this a fun fight. Breaking it down, Loopy trains at a Lobo gym. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She's an LFA alum and former champion. She has the record for fastest turnaround in modern UFC history with 7 days. She also has the record for shortest span between 3 fights in modern UFC history, 42 days. She's tied with Carla Esparza, Tatiana Suarez, and Yan Xiaonan for second longest win streak in women's strawweight history at 6. She's the first and only woman to win 4 fights in a calendar year in UFC history. And she's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 5-2 since 2023. Now, Jessica's been around. She's got some accolades. She has a black belt in BJJ. She's the former strawweight champion. 2 of her last 4 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. She shows up, she shows out. She has the most performance of the night bonuses in UFC women's history with 6. The most fight of the night bonuses in UFC women's history with 5. She has the most post-fight bonuses in UFC women's history at 11. The most post-fight bonuses in strawweight history at 9. The most wins in UFC women's history at 17. Most bouts in UFC women's history with 29. The most finishes in UFC women's history with 9. She's tied with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carla Esparza, Mackenzie Dern, and Zhang Weilei for third most wins in UFC women's strawweight history with 10. She's got most finishes in UFC women's strawweight history with 6. Most knockouts in strawweight history with 4. She has the second most knockdowns landed in a UFC women's strawweight division and in UFC women's history with 4 against Mackenzie Dern. She's tied for third most knockdowns landed in a fight in UFC history with 4. She's tied with Eileen Perez for most takedowns landed in a UFC women's bout with 10 against Tisha Torres. She's the only woman in UFC history to fight in 3 weight classes, fight and win. She has the most bouts by a woman and is tied for most bouts in a calendar year in UFC history with 5 in 2023. She has the most significant strikes landed in a UFC women's flyweight bout, 231 against Lauren Murphy. She has the first standing arm triangle choke in UFC history, the 2022 submission of the year against Amanda Lemos, where she did have that standing arm triangle. She's a Ring of Fire alum. She's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 3-5 since 2023. 10 of her 26 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so 18 of her 26 via finish. Now, since Jessica has trained at her own gym and she moved back and forth from flyweight and strawweight, she hasn't had a lot of success. She did defeat Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez at strawweight and really ransacked them. Mackenzie Dern's complicated situation, coming off the divorce, having to pay her husband, blah, blah, blah. But I think she's much better, so she still can be a serious problem. Again, I think Loopy is tough enough and more technical to weather the early storm that Jessica will provide, and she's going to find a way to wear on Jessica, potentially take her down, and turn the tides as the fight goes on. Whoever has any success offensively wrestling might have the edge here. Plus, you know, Jessica likes to move forward recklessly and engage, which I think plays into Godinez's strengths as a counter striker. For that reason, I'm taking Loopy Godinez. We are putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. It is crazy. That's why I had to double check that Loopy is a favorite against Jessica Andrade, but Jessica's had a tough go of late. Regardless, still in the prelims, we have Gerald, GM3 Meerschaert, 37 years old with a 37-19 record, taking on McCall Hussar Oleksiejczuk, 30 years old with a 29-1 record. Now this is an interesting matchup, as McCall has shown his potential with his striking, but he doesn't have great striking defense or grappling defense. And Gerald is solid everywhere. But Gerald looked really slow 4 months ago against Brad Tavares in strictly a striking fight, as Brad did not shoot any takedowns and stuffed every attempt GM3 had. Now rewind a year ago to 2024, GM3 looked fantastic. He beat up the young Edmund Shabazian. He beat up Bryan Barberena. So we don't really know what version we're going to get on display here. But breaking it down, Gerald has a southpaw stance. He trains out of Killcliff FC. He has a black belt in Rofu Sport Kickboxing and BJJ. He has the most submission wins in UFC history with 11. He's tied with Damian Maia for third most submissions in UFC history with 11. He has the highest submission rate in UFC history, 11 submissions and 12 wins, so it's 91.7%. He also has the second most submission attempts in UFC middleweight history with 19, behind Thales Leites. He has the most finishes in UFC middleweight history with 12. He has the highest finish rate in UFC history. He has 12 wins, 12 finishes, 100%, and that's with a minimum of 10 wins. He's a King of the Cage, Titan FC, RFA alum and former champion. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 2-4 since 2023. 29 of his 37 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 35 of 37 via finish. 9 of his 19 losses are also via submission, and he has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Now, McCall has a purple belt in BJJ. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-4 since 2023. 15 of his 20 wins are via knockout. 6 of his 9 losses are via submission. Definitely plays into GM3's favor. Now, McCall should be a much quicker and more powerful striker at this point in his career. He's just now hitting his prime at 30. But after his 3-fight losing streak, he seems super defeated. He seemed like he was almost done with fighting, but he got saved by getting Cedricus Dumas in a fight and getting a round 1 TKO. I could see GM3 looking to get takedowns early and often. I just don't know if he'll be successful. I mean, after his last outing against Brad Tavares, I just can't take him serious enough. I do think McCall is a one-trick pony. I don't think very highly of him. But for the reason I'm taking Michael Oleksiejczuk. I am not putting him on any parlays. I would not be shocked if GM3 won. But for some reason, after GM3's last fight, I just can't pick him anymore. Moving on. We have Diego Fajeda, 40 years old with a 19-6 record, taking on King Green, 38 years old with a 32-17-1 record. Now, these two vets have not seemed to slow down much at all. They have just been thrown in the fire against up-and-coming contenders or contenders, but have rolled through everybody else. Both men have very violent styles, which should make for an absolutely fantastic fight. I'm sure there will be a finish, and I can't wait for it, to be honest with you. Breaking it down, Diego trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a third-degree black belt in BJJ. He won silver in 2009 and bronze in 2008 for the No-Gi World Championships. 5 of his last 7 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He's a Legacy FC alum and former champion. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023, so he hasn't been super active. 7 of his 19 wins are via submission, 5 via knockout, so 12 of his 19 wins via finish. 3 of his 6 losses are via knockout, and he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, King has an orthodox stance. He trains out at Pinnacle MMA. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He has the most significant strikes in UFC lightweight division history with 1,864. The most total strikes landed in lightweight history at 2,091. He's an Affliction, King of the Cage, and Strikeforce alum. He was a King of the Cage champion. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023. 11 of his 32 wins are via knockout, 9 via submission. So 20 of his 32 wins via finish, and 6 of his 17 losses are via knockout. Now, anything, absolutely anything could happen in this fight, realistically. I expect a Kevin Holland-like striking showcase from King, where he isn't super technical. He's just coming at you and kung fu fighting, as Holland says. He'll throw big power shots, spinning techniques from everywhere. His hands will be down, pop, pop. But I expect Diego to be more patient. I expect Diego to be more powerful, but Green will probably have the speed advantage. I just think Diego is going to get some takedowns and fight in close and clinch up against the cage. For that reason, I'm taking Diego Fajeda, but I'm avoiding this on any parlay. Again, anything can happen in this fight. And that sets us up for the main card. We have Kai Asakura, 31 years old with a 21-5 record and the number 11 next to his name, taking on Tim Elliott, 38 years old with a 21-13-1 record and the number 15 next to his name. So this fight's really a UFC veteran taking on a risen phenom in this showdown. And Kai in his UFC start to his career got thrown right into a title shot, but he was dominated by Pantoja. At this point of his career, Tim probably lacks the striking speed and power to hang with Kai at the beginning of his prime at 31 years old. But Tim's wrestling could be what secures him a victory here. You know, Pantoja had success with his wrestling. Tim being off for so long, I don't know if he has the level of wrestling of Pantoja per se, so to be determined. But you know, Kai has been training takedown defense in preparation for the Pantoja fight and now Tim. But it's only been about 10 months since he's had time to do so. You can't add everything in that kind of time frame. But Tim is somewhat of a wild card. You know, he's about to turn 39 years old, and he's been out due to injury since December of 23. But breaking it down, Kai trains at a Japan top team. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He's a former two-time risen bantamweight champion. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 0-1 in the UFC, but 2-1 since 2023. 13 of his 21 wins are via knockout, and 3 of his 5 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Tim has a blue belt in BJJ. He has a D2 wrestling background at a Labette Community College, and he was a JUCO champion at a Central Oklahoma in 2007. He's an RFA and Titan FC alum. He was a Titan FC champion with 2 successful title defenses, an Ultimate Fighter alum, and he's had 2 stints with the UFC. He has the most takedowns landed in UFC flyweight history with 59. He has the most total strikes landed in flyweight history at 1,786. He's tied with Brandon Moreno for second most bouts in UFC flyweight history with 18, behind Joseph Benavidez. He's tied with Joseph Benavidez for most decision wins in UFC flyweight history at 7. He has the most decision bouts in flyweight history at 13. The most unanimous decision wins in flyweight history at 7. He has the second most control time with 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 39 seconds. And the most top position time in flyweight history at 1 hour, 1 second, and 27 seconds. Both of those behind Demetrius Johnson. 7 of his 20 wins are via submission. 6 of his 13 losses are via submission as well. So to submit or be submitted. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. Now, neither man has been super active of late, but Kai left risen and he's been able to try and level up in the gym, while Tim has been recovering and doesn't have age on his side, but he is a tricky veteran. Tim will definitely bring the pace to Kai. He's going to move the entire fight to try to avoid the power and explosiveness of Asakura. But the trick for Tim is going to be not to rush in for takedowns and time the opportunities, because if he does rush in, he could get knocked out. Kai is going to try to pressure Tim forward and overwhelm him, but I think he'll be too fast and too powerful for the veteran. For that reason, I'm taking Kai Asakura. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Gerald, the Killer Gorilla Cannoneer. 41 years old with a 18-8 record and the number 8 next to his name. Taking on Michael Venom Page. 38 years old with a 23-3 record and the number 15 next to his name. Now, I'm actually surprised that MVP is the favorite here, and it's probably because Gerald is 41, but he has showcased he is still fighting at an elite level in 2024. He had back and forth fights in kind of up-and-coming title contenders in Kayal Baralho and Nasruddin Imavov, and he defeated the deadly Gregory Rodriguez in February. Now, MVP wasn't able to get an opponent in the welterweight division, so he is staying up at middleweight, but he's facing a serious challenge and threat because the Killer Gorilla has power and good grappling, which is weaknesses of Michael Venom Page. Breaking it down, Gerald has an orthodox stance. He trains out of the MMA lab here in Phoenix. He has a brown belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 4 fights have been fight of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He has the most significant strikes landed in a UFC middleweight bout at 241 against Marvin Vettori. He's one of 2 fighters, which is also Conor McGregor, to have knockout victories in 3 different weight classes. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2023. 11 of his 18 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 8 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, MVP has a kickboxing style. He trains out of London Shoot Fighters. He has a black belt in Kung Fu. He won silver in the 2010 World Combat Games and semi-contact, gold in the WKA World Championships, and in 2009, and 2007, the Waco, he won gold all in semi-contact. He's a Bellator alum. He has the most stoppage victories in Bellator welterweight history with 10. The most knockout victories in Bellator welterweight history in 9. He's tied with Patricky Pitbull for most knockout victories in Bellator history with 11. He had the 2016 Bellator Knockout of the Year against Evangelista Santos. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2023, 2-1 in the UFC, and 13 of his 23 wins are via knockout. Now, Ian Gary was able to take MVP down, and that helped him to his victory. I just feel like Gerald is too big and too powerful for MVP. So I expect Gerald to get takedowns and be the fighter pressuring forward. MVP has great footwork. He's tricky with the karate stance. He's going to have to be on his bike a lot and look to counter with his speed and power. But if RoboCop can't finish Gerald early, I don't expect MVP to be able to do it. MVP's last fight at middleweight was good against a solid kickboxer in Shara, but this is a much different middleweight challenge. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking the Killer Gorilla. The dog's coming to eat. But I'm avoiding this on any parlays. I could see a way where Michael moves enough and barely lands shots and wins a very, very boring split decision. But I think Gerald's going to overpower him and tire him out on his way to victory. Moving on, we have Carlos, the Nightmare Prates. 31 years old with a 21-7 record and the number 11 next to his name, taking on Jeff, Hands of Steel, Neal. 34 years old with a 16-6 record and the number 12 next to his name. Now, this is a ton of fun as we get strikers in their primes with some serious power. Oh no, my mouse just died. One second. Both guys are very aggressive early in their fights as well. We have seen mixed versions of Jeff in the past few years. You know, he lost a close fight to Ian Gary where he was very defensive. Ian was very defensive against Neil. And he battled an up-and-coming talent in Shavkat Rakhmonov 2 years ago where he defended his takedowns. But he also lost to Neil Magny in 21, and he defeated Bilal Muhammad back in 2019. He's kind of been a little bit all over the map. In Carlos's fight against Ian Gary, we saw that he has heart, and he actually has better cardio for a cigarette smoker than I expected, but he got out IQ'd and game planned in that fight, and I think that was a huge learning moment for him to prepare him for this fight. But breaking it down, Carlos has a Muay Thai style. He has a southpaw stance. He trains out of the Fighting Nerds. He has a black belt in BJJ. 4 of his 5 UFC fights have been performance of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He was the 2024 Newcomer of the Year. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 5-1 in the UFC since 2023. 16 of his 21 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 7 losses are via submission. And he does have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Jeff trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He's a Legacy FC, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2023. Now, Jeff is used to fighting the young and up-and-coming talent of late, and he's used to being the underdog, but he can't be counted out. He's going to have the experience advantage, and I think he will be able to focus on the striking from Carlos because Carlos isn't going to be looking for takedowns. This should be a high-action, very violent affair, and Carlos is going to look for Jeff to slip and time his big shot. He's always loading up his big shot, but Jeff has great boxing and striking defense of his own. I could see him winning a decision, with his pressure, his fighting IQ, but I'm not going to bet against Carlos coming off his first loss. He's about to be 32, so he's in the middle of his prime. He trains with a good team. I think they will have a good game plan prepared. Both men are about to celebrate their birthdays later this month as well. So we'll see who really wants it, who gets to take enough chances to get the victory and avoid the other's kill shot. But I'm going to take Carlos Prates, but I am not putting him on any parlays. I think this is another opportunity for the veteran to defeat a young up-and-coming talent. But that sets us up for the co-main event. We get another very anticipated debut. We have Leroy, the Miracle Murphy, 34 years old with an undefeated 16-0-1 record and the number 6 next to his name, taking on Aaron Pico, 28 years old with a 13-4 record. Now, I'm excited to see Pico's debut. We get to enjoy the ride as he's coming to the UFC at 28 years old, so before his prime, which has been very rare from Bellator fighters making transitions. And he's a legit contender, but he's taken on a legit contender and an absolute stud in Leroy Murphy. They're throwing Aaron straight into the deep end here in the UFC, which doesn't surprise me, but Pico's toughest opponent thus far in Bellator has probably been Henry Corrales, Jeremy Kennedy. Most of you probably don't know those fighters. I hardly do. It's not saying much. I am a massive UFC fan, and I don't know most of the opponents that he's faced in Bellator. Now, he is coming off back-to-back first-round finishes, and he knows how big of a win against Murphy would be in his career, the financial opportunities, just the brand that he would have in the UFC. So you can't count him out with his grappling, and he's in phenomenal shape. But man, Leroy has been fed to the wolves of late. He's in his prime as well. He's coming off wins against Josh Emmett, Dan Ige, and Edson Barboza. But breaking this down, Leroy trains out of Manchester Top Team. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He's undefeated on a 16-fight winning streak. He's 5-0 since 2023, and 7 of his 16 wins are via knockout. Now, Aaron, of course, has a freestyle wrestling background. He trains out of Jackson Wink MMA. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He won gold in the 2014 and 2015 Men's Freestyle Wrestling Grand Prix. He's a Bellator alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak and is 3-0 since 2023. Now, again, Aaron is debuting against another stud who is also in phenomenal shape. He has solid wrestling and wrestling defense of his own. I don't think Pico is going to be able to hang with Lerone on the feet because of his technique and his speed, but he is going to have to take Lerone down and keep him down. I'm not betting on him being able to do that. I am pretty shocked Aaron's the favorite here. I think it is slight disrespect to Lerone Murphy. Bellator fighters haven't had a ton of success since transitioning either. I almost have a gut feeling this is going to be much like the Patchy Mix display. I think Lerone comes out aggressive early, stuffs some takedowns, kickboxes him, and puts on a show. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. Ho, ho. We putting Lerone Murphy on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. And that sets us up for the main event. Oh, man. Oh, mama. Johnny Bravo style. I can't wait for this. We got Drakkar, Still Knocks Duplessis, 31 years old with a 23-2 record, taking on Khamzat Bors Chimaev, 31 years old with an undefeated 14-0 record. Of course, I've said it many a times. This is one of the fights I've been itching to see. We've been talking about Khamzat having a title shot for years, and it finally happens. And against a guy that is one of the more abnormal champions that we've seen in a long time. I mean, this is going to be balls to the wall, absolute fireworks. It's pretty simple to me. The thing that's going to make the difference in this fight is, can DDP get out of the first round and avoid being taken down and smothered by Khamzat? If he can, I think he's going to be able to put on a pace and be the fighter pressuring Khamzat forward, which doesn't allow him to come forward and insert his game plan. Khamzat has shown that he's slowed down later in fights. He's struggled against other fighters that come forward, like we saw in the Usman and Gilbert Burns fight. And they're a lot smaller fighters. They are very natural welterweights. DDP is a big middleweight. He will have the size to not let Khamzat just ragdoll him. So I can't wait. Breaking it down, Drakkar has an orthodox stance. He has a second-degree black belt in kickboxing. He has 2 successful title defenses. He's the first South African fighter to win a UFC championship. He's the 2024 International Fighter of the Year. He had the 2024 Submission of the Year against Israel Adesanya. 2 of his last 4 fights have been Fight of the Night or Performance of the Night. He shows up, he shows out. He's a KSW alum and former champion. He's on an 11-fight winning streak, 9-0 in the UFC. 11 of his 23 wins are via submission, 9 via knockout, so 20 of his 23 wins via finish. Now, Khamzat has a brown belt in BJJ. He has a wrestling style. He's got the record for the fastest consecutive wins in modern UFC history, 10 days. He has the record for quickest 3-fight win streak in modern UFC history, 66 days. He was the 2020 Newcomer of the Year. He had 2024 Submission of the Year against Robert Whittaker. 6 of his last 8 UFC fights are Fight of the Night or Performance of the Night. Absolutely shows up, he shows out. He's undefeated on a 14-fight winning streak. 8-0 in the UFC. 6 of his 14 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 12 of his 14 wins via finish. But hey, we get 2 undefeated fighters who have put on shows in the UFC and are in their fighting primes. What else could you ask for? I mean, you could try to break this fight down, be analytical, you could be technical, but neither man really have beautiful technique. They're just kind of wild childs that go to the balls to the wall. DDP has been too big and powerful for everyone, and Khamzat has only been out of the first round twice. And in those fights, he was very close to losing those fights due to the lack of striking output and offense after round 1. If he could get a takedown and wear DDP out early, I expect DDP to get a finish of his own. I keep thinking of the highlights of DDP against like Izzy, just kind of like blasting rugby style into his opponent, somehow getting takedowns. I could see DDP surviving up against the cage, getting out around 1, and just coming at Khamzat, and Khamzat's, too tired to come forward, and I could see a round 3, round 4 finish. So I'm taking the underdog, the dogs coming to eat. I'm taking DDP. We are putting them on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. DDP is going to keep reminding people, what the hell is he doing? How does he get the wins? We don't know, but he fucking has heart. He's a fucking massive middleweight fighter, and he's going to find a way. And I can't wait for him to help me in my parlays. What a card. What a card. We have amazing fights. Aaron Pico, Khamzat, violent matchups. The Bobby Green or King Green fights. I can't wait for this one. But next week, we have another location-based fight night. We go to Shanghai, China for some early morning action. It's a solid location-based fight night card headlined by 13th ranked Johnny Walker and 14th ranked Zhang Mingyang. That's episode 111. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.